I'm aware. But it's Tuesday, and we're here on Small Ball. So I understand that it's late and might not get quite the viewership that we normally do, but I do encourage you guys to go ahead and give it a watch maybe tomorrow or whatever the case may be. I've talked a little bit in the past about this ever so changing schedule. I think I've gotten a grasp on it. So hear me out. Let me know what you think in the comments. What I'm going to do going forward is a schedule of Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. Okay? So a Sunday, so 3 days in a row, off Wednesday, back at it Thursday, and then 2 days off until Sunday. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick with the night shows until about June, give or take, something like that. Right around when like school ends. I want to do morning shows as much as possible during the season because, like I said yesterday, it gives me an opportunity to watch the games and you guys as well. It gets tricky for me to do it in the mornings during school for two reasons. The primary reason being a lot of my viewership is students. And obviously, if we're doing it at noon or whatever, during the school day, you guys who are students won't have the ability, most likely, to watch. So that's the primary reason. The other reason is, especially during the season, I like to watch all of the condensed games mornings. So mornings are really difficult during the school year. So the schedule, like I said, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. Not sure when I'm going to start. I'll probably stick with the same schedule for this week and then whatever. But night shows till June. And then starting in June, it'll probably be like a noon show right before the 1 o'clock games. And then we can obviously watch the games for the remainder of the day and go from there. Now, enough of that housekeeping stuff. Let's talk baseball. So, it is Tuesday, and you know what that means. It's time for a Tuesday top 10. This has been a very successful bit that I have been doing, a lot of positive feedback in that regard. So, let's do it. Top 10 center fielders in the game today. Here we go. Number 10. Very difficult number 10 for me because there are a lot of similar players. And by similar, I mean young players / prospects who have shown a lot of promise, but don't necessarily – I mean, it's not really necessarily distinguishable who's going to this season produce the most. These are guys like Oscar Mercado, who had a strong rookie year, Nick Senzel, who was moved to the outfield, who's obviously a very promising prospect. The guy that I'm going to go with is Austin Hayes at number 10. I think Austin Hayes last year, 309, 947 OPS. Now, he only played 21 games, so very small sample size, but very productive in those 21 games, 13 strikeouts, 4 home runs, 13 RBIs, and played really well defensively, 54 putouts in 21 games. And obviously that's a small sample size, but this is a guy who doesn't run particularly well at all for a center fielder, but those defensive numbers are eye-popping and obviously speaks to his abilities defensively and his instincts. So I think of Austin Hayes as an offensive-minded center fielder, but I think last year, towards the end of the year, when he got called up, was able to see some promise defensively as well. And like I said, you kind of have to be an all-around player in today's day and age, but those are numbers that really speak to his potential. Now, in his career, which is a career 41 games, he played 21 last year, 20 back in 2017, 266, 765 OPS. So up and down so far, very small sample size. Promising prospect. I have him actually doing the best this year. I think a guy like Senzel has more potential long term. I think Oscar Mercado I really, really like, especially defensively. But I think that Austin Hayes has a higher ceiling. I think Oscar Mercado is more balanced and well-rounded. I think Austin Hayes has the opportunity to be a legitimate top 10 center fielder. I think this year he will be. I think he might have a breakout year, maybe somewhere in the range of like a 280, 830 OPS with really solid defense. Not a playmaker, but he'll do everything necessary at that spot. Has a pretty strong throwing arm. Austin Hayes, number 10. Number 9, sorry, Mets fans, he's only number 9. I have Michael Conforto. Now, Conforto to me has been consistent. He has been fairly balanced. He has been a pretty substantial piece of a inconsistent up and down lineup that is the Mets. He has produced a lot of runs on a lineup and on a team rather that doesn't necessarily create a lot for themselves. So I think he's a very, very valuable piece. I'm not sure his talent is quite there. Defensively, he's not a center fielder in my book. I think he's much more suited for a corner, but the Mets obviously don't have someone they can put in center field to replace him, and he's honestly probably the best option that they have in that regard. But defensively, he does not move well. His instincts are even worse, and he throws average. Offensively, high strikeout rate is really what holds him back offensively on this list, but he's consistently in the 270s, 280s. And he put up 35, something like that, home runs last year. I think it was 33, if I'm not mistaken. Consistently more in the 20s, and obviously the uptick in power all across Major League Baseball last year. But offensively, he's well-rounded. He can get some hits. He can hit for power. A lot of extra base hits, not necessarily home runs, but does not run well. Strikes out way too much in my book, about a strikeout per game, which is very high. And the defense is not there. But just from an eye test perspective, I think he's been able to create a lot more runs than I think most players in his position on that team would. So I actually have him on this list at number 9. Number 8, and I think he could very well be higher, but a very, very down year, is Lorenzo Cain. Now, my guess, and he did play a full season. He played, I think, 151 games. I'm going to guess that he was battling an injury. I don't know what that could have been, but his numbers, and he's not old, his numbers really did not reflect the player that he is. Last year, 260 batting average, 697 OPS, with 18 stolen bases, which is very good, but traditionally in his career, he's been in the 30s and oftentimes even in the 40s. His defense was average at best last year, which is very, very not like him. He's typically a premier defender at a premier position. Lifetime, 288 average, 761 OPS. Like I said, 30s, 40s in terms of stolen bases. Back in 2018, so the year before last, hit 308 with an 813 OPS. The year before, I believe he hit like 313. So if you strip away last year, this is probably a top 5 center fielder in the game. Obviously, the down year hurts. He's got to be on this list. I have him only 8th. I'm hoping he can bounce back, but I'm not sure. And I think that, his situation last year, his environment was a very good one in that Brewers lineup. So I'm really not sure what it was. My guess is, especially lower stolen base total, defense was down. I'm going to guess maybe he had an ankle injury or something along those lines, maybe a hamstring that we didn't know about. And if that's the case, obviously that speaks to his toughness and his ability to produce still. And he was productive, not at 100%. So I think if he's back to 100%, if that's what was the problem, I think he's a top 5 center fielder in this game. But of course, it's very feasible that he's just sort of regressing. So I hope he comes back to where he was, but I have Lorenzo Cain 8. Number 7 is somebody who, it's weird. Doesn't really go, he kind of goes against a lot of things that I look for in a top-level player. But for some reason, I just have a good feeling when this guy comes to the plate in big spots. And that's Max Kepler. Now, what I mean by goes against what I sort of look for is he's really, statistically speaking, he's not a clutch hitter at all. Okay? Last year was his first real taste of playoff experience. Played obviously that series against the Yankees. His only playoff experience prior was a 1-game wild card game against the Yankees, in which he went 1 for 3. But that's his only hit. Last year he had 13 plate appearances, 10 at-bats in that series, and actually went 0 for, so in his career, 0.77 playoff hitter. But in the regular season, in big spots, I really, really like to have Max Kepler up at the plate. He's very balanced offensively. His strikeout rate is very, very, very good. He hits for some power. Last year, uptick in home runs, 36. Obviously, we know that all across Major League Baseball, they were up. Last year, 855 OPS, which is much higher than his lifetime 763. 238 lifetime, but 252 last year. So uptick in batting average and OPS, but lifetime 238, 763 kind of guy. It's weird to me that I have him so high, I got to be honest. 90 ribbies, though, last year, and 98 runs, run the bases exceptionally well, not particularly fast, but very, very good base running eyes. 90 ribbies, though, last year, and 98 runs, run the bases exceptionally well, not particularly fast, but very, very good base running eye. Putouts in 134 games at a premier position in a pretty tricky place to play center field at Target Field in Minnesota. The biggest thing to me with Kepler, and the reason why I think he's actually going to improve, now he's played 5 seasons, so he's not exactly a rookie. But this is a guy, think about this, he's from Germany. He was a soccer player growing up, and even in his, teen years. He really didn't start playing baseball until he was like 16 or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. To me, he's almost – I almost consider him in terms of his baseball trajectory as a rookie kind of a player. Because baseball was not really a part of his culture growing up. He hasn't been playing it for nearly as long as these other big leaguers have been playing the game of baseball. So to me, I think his almost breakout year last year, he actually got an MVP voter too, I saw when I was looking at some of his stats, which is kind of absurd. I'm not really sure how that works. It probably wasn't a first-place vote, but I think they can only vote for like 3. So somebody had him in their top 3 last year, which honestly I don't really understand. But I think he was like 20th in MVP voting, so he must have at least gotten 1 vote or 2 or whatever the case may be. But if you think about it, let's say he's been playing baseball for 6-7 years of his career. If he had a breakout year last year, maybe he's starting to actually develop himself as a baseball player, and we can consider this like his rookie year almost, right? So I actually think he's going to improve. I like him in big spots. Obviously, the playoff series last year against the Yankees was abysmal and something that he has to figure out, but very well-rounded, great strikeout rate, great defensive instincts, and a tough place to play the outfield and Target. I think that he's balanced offensively and defensively. Not a lot of holes in his game, if any. Maybe, speed, but it's not a hole. He runs perfectly fine. So I actually have Max Kepler 7th, a guy that I project to improve, a guy that I like in big spots in the regular season, hopefully in the postseason down the road, on an improving roster and lineup. That's going to help him as well. And like I said, he's from Germany. I think he's going to take more time to develop than than an average MLB player, than a typical MLB player. That's the word I was looking for. Max Kepler, I have 7th in 2020. 238 lifetime, though, is kind of low, so I don't know. It's weird. That was one of the weirder ones to me, but whatever the case may be, as they say. 36 bombs, though. Let's not. 855 OPS for Max Kepler. Number 6, I have Ramon Laureano. Now, this is a guy who's obviously been thought of for his defense, and his defense is incredible. But offensively, not that he's struggled, but that's really hasn't been his forte. Well, not last year. 288 with an 860 OPS. And actually, lifetime 286. He's only played 2 years and an 853 OPS. So he's played 2 seasons now. One of them was a half year. And he's produced offensively for his entire time thus far in the major leagues. Coming up as a prospect, he wasn't really supposed to be an offensive guy, but nothing so far in his major league career has sort of pointed to him not being a productive offensive player. 24 home runs last year is pretty good for a smaller guy. And like I said, the defense is incredible. Probably the best arm of any outfielder in the league right now, or player in the league right now. I don't think, and a lot of guys like we've talked about have been, come up, had success, and then they kind of trail off. I don't see him as that kind of a guy. Maybe not quite the numbers that he's been putting up, but balanced swing, very good athlete. I don't see Ramon Laureano as the kind of guy who's really going to have a huge sort of trail off after a really strong rookie and sophomore year. Honestly, if I'm starting a team today, he's my 6th best center fielder. The defense is there, and it's probably the 2nd or 3rd most important defensive position. Athletic, projects to improve, I think, especially on the defensive side. It's tricky. I think it's a risky pick because I think he could come back down pretty rapidly offensively, but so far he's producing, so I have Ramon Laureano 6th. In a good lineup, too. That A's defense is terrific. Number 5 is a guy that really does not get enough credit. Really, really strong career so far. Not a lot of pop, right? Not a lot of – I don't mean pop as in power. I mean pop as in, an explosive tool, right? I've talked about this. Like I forgot to mention with Max Kepler. I really look for, an explosive tool. I like my players to have one tool that they really excel at. Max Kepler doesn't, but I think he obviously the counter to that is being a well-rounded player, and I think he is one. Starling Marte is incredibly well-rounded, an incredible athlete, has produced for his entire career, but I don't think he quite gets the credit he deserves because he doesn't have that explosive tool. He's a lifetime 287 career hitter. Last year, 295, 23 home runs in Pittsburgh, which is, a pretty standard team. Now he comes to Arizona, better lineup, hitter's ballpark. I think this is your breakout player of 2020. I have a couple in mind, and I'm going to do a segment on that down the road. I think Starling Marte is going to get some MVP votes this year. I really do. 287 lifetime. Now, 125 career in the playoffs. And just optically, when I was making this list in my head without looking at stats, I was thinking Starling Marte in a big spot. Something about that just doesn't sit with me quite right. And then statistically, I was correct. 125 in the playoffs. So that's kind of what's holding him back. He's very well-rounded, an incredible athlete. He doesn't really project to improve from where he is now. He's kind of getting up there in age. And there's nothing really about him that I think is going to get better. I think his power is okay. 23 home runs last year. 25, stolen bases is a lot in today's day and age. So runs obviously very, very well. His defense was outstanding last year. Now he comes into Arizona, which is a very tough place to defend as well. Starling Marte, almost put Marte 4th. Because this next player I have a lot of issues with. But I kind of had to be honest with you guys and with myself. Ronald Acuna Jr. is obviously a star-level player. I mean, I really I don't want to say like I wanted to hold him back on this list because I don't really have anything against him as a person, but I wanted to hold him back on this list because there are a lot of things about his game that I don't like nearly as much as other people do. A lot of people have him out to be like a top 3 player in this league. I think he's nowhere close. A very large number of people would pick him to start their franchise first overall. I say that that's absolutely absurd. His strikeout rate is astronomical, 188 strikeouts last year. His defense, now this is kind of where I've been wrong on Ronald Acuna Jr. I thought his defense was going to be miserable, when he was coming up as a prospect. I think he projected to be an incredible athlete, an incredible hitter, an offensive player, runs well, hits well. But his defensive instincts coming up were really, really lacking. And in his rookie year, really, really, really struggled defensively. But last year actually put up very, very solid numbers in center field. Atlanta's a pretty easy place to play the outfield, in my personal opinion, especially center. But lifetime 288. Last year, 41 bombs, 37 stolen bases. So almost got into that 40-40 club, which is obviously absurd. 101 RBIs, 127 runs. Obviously, he runs well, but that speaks to his base running abilities. And here's where also I was wrong on Ronald Acuna. Again, incredible athlete, high energy swing, kind of projects to struggle in the playoffs, especially a rookie, sophomore year player. Doesn't really project to have postseason success. That's where I was wrong on Ronald Acuna last year. 444 in the postseason. Lifetime. 444. That's incredible. Obviously a small sample size. But I think he's a star. I think that he has incredible talent. While he did statistically perform very well, I don't think he's ever going to be an elite defender. A lot of people see him as a great defender. I do not. Obviously, he's athletic, very strong throwing arm, but his defensive instinct does not play the ball on the ground well at all. And doesn't track the ball particularly well either. So I don't actually have him in my top 3. And again, he projects as somebody who might fall off a little bit later in his career. And by later, I mean like soon. Like high energy swing, incredible athlete, but not necessarily mechanically where he needs to be. I question his judgment at times. Obviously, had the hustle issues in the playoffs last year that a lot of people were critical of. I don't always love his judgment. I sort of feel like he knows how great of an athlete and a talent he is and is okay with that. Sort of doesn't feel, like he needs to improve, but that might not be fair to say. That's just kind of what I saw last year in the playoffs. Sees himself as an elite player, but I don't think quite is in that elite category. But that might not be fair to say. I mean, I don't want to talk about his character when I've only seen him for like a year and a half. But to me, it's the strikeouts. It's the high-effort swing that I think later in his career he's going to need to adjust. And I'm not sure he's the personality to do that. I think he's very high on himself, which doesn't bode well for somebody who needs to make adjustments for obvious reasons, right? So I think that it's very possible that when he has to make adjustments, when pitchers sort of start to figure him out, he becomes a lesser version of himself offensively and defensively for different reasons. But the talent is there. I have him 4th. I don't have him 3rd now. Highest ceiling on this list probably going forward, but I think the floor is lower than people think. Ronald Acuna is 4. And again, I don't want to bash his character because I don't know too much about him, but seems a little bit too high on himself. Players, and I think George Springer. This is probably the biggest example of why this Astros thing is so tough for me. Is because George Springer is just an incredible character. From a character and personality perspective and standpoint, the leaders, one of the faces of this league. Obviously has done incredible things for his organization, for stuttering, for kids who have like a stuttering problem, because he actually has dealt with that and is still dealing with that today. And it's tough because you have to question, obviously, ethics when this cheating stuff comes into play. And I want to believe that Springer was not one of the major forces in that scandal. And I do believe that, but obviously there are questions there. And it's pretty much as close to being confirmed as it's going to be that he obviously did partake in the cheating. So that in and of itself has its ethical issues. But from a baseball perspective, 5-tool player, legitimate 5-tool player, power, speed, arm, contact, defense, right? Postseason success, World Series MVP back in 2017. I mean, he's just a star. And that's kind of why I have him over Acuna right now, is because I have questions about Acuna down the road. George Springer came into the league as an incredible player and has only gotten better, and now has transformed himself into a World Series MVP. So I think there are a lot of examples of players that come up and have a touch high for my liking, but it's fine. Sort of fix that. Defensively, he was athletic, but not necessarily mechanically sound. He has fixed that. I think he's very aggressive, which I like, both offensively and defensively. There was a moment in the World Series back in 2017 where he dove for a ball in Game 5 that he probably shouldn't have. And I think it was in a big spot. They went down 8-7, I believe, in like the 7th or 8th inning. Obviously a questionable decision. Comes up, leads off the bottom of the inning, and hits about a 450-foot bomb to tie it up. So it's just sort of an example of his personality, right? That aggressive mentality, very aggressive defensively and going after, trying to make plays, right? And then, if it doesn't quite work out the way he expects, just lets it go, right? And finds another way to contribute and another way to win a baseball game. So that's kind of why I have him over Acuna, because I think they're both incredible talents and are both legitimate 5-tool. I don't know if Acuna's a 5-tool player. The defense isn't quite there. The contact, I mean, he gets hits, right? But he's not, the K rate's high. Springer's a 5-tool player, a World Series MVP. And, if I'm starting a team now that I anticipate is going to be in the postseason, I really, really would like to have George Springer. Another thing about him is he's versatile offensively. He can lead off. He can hit second, third, sometimes even fourth, depending on the lineup. You really plug him anywhere in a lineup. Balanced offensively, can hit for contact, can hit for power, can run extremely well, runs the bases extremely well, is fast, but also really good base running IQ. George Springer's third. Number 2, and I'm going to talk about him a lot later in this other segment that I'm going to do. I whiffed on Cody Bellinger. Not that I whiffed. I thought he was going to be a good player, but there was a time. Well, I shouldn't say that. I think early, very, very early in his professional career, I saw a lot of bust potential. Then as he was coming up as a prospect, sort of later, as he got closer to his MLB debut, I started to see some stuff that I liked, and I thought he could be a good player. Cody Bellinger is a Hall of Fame player. He is a 5-tool player. It's remarkable how good he is defensively for somebody who isn't really particularly – I mean, he's athletic, but he's not quick. It's remarkable. His arm strength is way better than I thought. Honestly, his outfield instincts are as good as they come. Obviously not quite the speed to be like a superstar, like perennial Gold Glove level defender. But I really questioned his ability to play center, early in his career. I'm sold on it now. I do think Betts should be in center this year. I think Betts is the best outfielder in Major League Baseball, but Bellinger is definitely capable, at length in terms of their lofty swings. And this is like one of the stereotypical players for incredible rookie year, but once pitchers figure him out, he's got to change that swing. But the hand-eye coordination with Cody Bellinger is remarkable. I mean, to have a swing with that much loft and to be able to hit consistent triple digits in the playoffs against top-level arms, I mean, it's remarkable. I mean, I thought he was a surefire, postseason, like 150 hitter, right? Incredible regular season, but against top-level arms in October when it matters, just to completely fall off, and he did the opposite. He's clutch. He's a superstar. He has an incredible personality and leadership qualities. Cody Bellinger is a Hall of Famer. He's number 2. And honestly, I was strongly considering him at number 1 here, but Mike Trout is my number 1. It's close. It's closer than people think. I think Betts and Trout is closer than people think, and I was giving this some thought. I think Bellinger and Trout is also closer than people think. But Mike Trout, what I like about Cody Bellinger over Mike Trout is that people don't realize this about Mike Trout. Mike Trout has holes in his game. A lot of people think of him as like the prototypical 5-tool player, which he is. But the strikeout rate is a touch high. It's high. I mean, it's not really – it could definitely be better. And the injuries are a significant concern, right? He's kind of banged up, last 5 years, been pretty much banged up every year. But he's finished first or second in MVP voting for 7 straight seasons. And yes, he's a legitimate 5-tool player, right? 47 home runs last year and missed a month. Incredible. I mean, lifetime 292 last year, lifetime over 300. OPS of 1083, and obviously the defense to come along with it. He's a defensive playmaker. He's an incredible athlete, maybe the best athlete in the game, top 5 athlete maybe in the world at the current moment. But not only is he an incredible athlete defensively, but he's a playmaker, and he has incredible instincts. He can make plays. I think the lack of postseason experience is also a concern. I question his greatness, and this is a big debate that, I've had with a lot of people, and a lot of people have talked about whether one player can get a team to the playoffs. And I don't know, but it's a little bit alarming that he's only been to the playoffs one time and he hasn't won a playoff game. He got swept in his only postseason appearance. That's a little bit questionable to me, but obviously it takes more than one guy. And yes, he's the best position player in baseball right now, but I think it's a lot closer than people give it credit. And this is not a glowing report for my number 1 on a list. I know I've said a lot of negative things, but I think it goes without saying that there are a lot of positive things to say about Mike Trout, who is the face of this league. Most people have him as undoubtedly the best player in this league. I think there are a pitcher or two that actually I would take ahead of him. But he's the best position player in the game, 5-tool player, first or second in MVP voting 7 straight years. Honestly, to me, it's similarly every year. I mean, obviously this is a Hall of Fame player who has fixed a lot of holes in his game early in his career. He's got to stay healthy. If he wants to be considered as an all-time great. I've heard people talk about him as the best player of all time. I think that's absurd, but we'll get to that another day. Mike Trout is number 1 on this list. He has to be. Like, honestly, I was thinking of ways to put Bellinger above him, and I've thought of ways in the past to put Betts above him, and I think it's a legitimate argument. But the consistency, the versatility, especially offensively, run, hit, throw, power, defense, character. I think if you put the right pieces around him, he's easily the best player in this league, position player in this league. It is alarming that he's 0-3 in the playoffs, and doesn't have no postseason experience. But I got to put him number one. So Mike Trout is my number one center fielder. Let me recap. Mike Trout 1, Bellinger 2, Cody Bellinger, George Springer 3, Ronald Acuna Jr. is number 4, Starling Marte 5, Ramon Laureano 6, Max Kepler 7, Lorenzo Cain 8, Michael Conforto 9, and Austin Hayes number 10. And there you have it. That is my top 10 center fielders. Definitely stay tuned because I have a very interesting segment coming up. One of them's like, I'm not going to say it's not interesting. One of them's more interesting than the other, but we'll get to that later. That was probably the longest Tuesday top 10 I've done. That was like 30 minutes. But hopefully you guys enjoyed. Now, it's a Tuesday. And traditionally early in the week, it's not that difficult for me to find things to talk about because obviously we have Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and some of Thursday to accumulate information and topics. And then later in the week, Wednesday, Thursday, it gets a little, start running out and it gets a little bit dry, right? Especially, before the regular season starts. But for some reason this week, I've had a little bit of trouble coming up with things to talk about. And what I do when I have things to talk about is I do like lists, right? I'll come up with like my top 5 whatever, or my, whatever the case may be, right? And so traditionally what I do is I try to save like those bits for later in the week when I don't have as much to talk about. But there was this thing that I saw on MLB, on the MLB app, on MLB.com, the app, that I really want to talk about because it's fascinating. So I don't know if you noticed, but MLB has put out this contest where you can pick various stat categories and who is going to lead them over the next decade. And if you win, I'm not really exactly sure what that means. I'm not sure if there's more than one winner. I haven't really looked into the details and whatever, I'm not sure if you have to get all of them right or whatever the case may be. I don't know. But there's some $1 million prize. And generally, I don't really do these things because it's like, obviously the chances are few. But this one I'm going to fill out because it's super interesting to me. And it feels very, I was trying to fill it out, right? And I feel like there's a lot of pressure because it's like once you lock it in, it's like it's a decade that you got to be like, oh, I can't believe I picked this guy over this guy. And honestly, there are a lot of guys that we probably aren't even talking about that may lead some of these categories. And I'll get to that in a second. But what I did is I filled it out. And this is preliminary. I haven't completely locked this in on MLB Network, MLB.com, excuse me. But here's my list. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 stat categories that we're supposed to pick over the next decade. Who is going to lead them? And this is going to be fun. I'm going to give you my picks. And again, obviously, there are guys. Baseball is known for its breakout players, right? And prospects. And it's tough. I mean, there's probably a lot of guys on this list that have a legitimate shot that we literally have never even, not that we've never heard of, but that we're really not considering. So in terms of prospects, it'd be difficult to overcome. I don't have anyone on my list that isn't going to be in the major leagues this year. For a significant amount. Casey Mize, I think, has a real legitimate shot. I mean, he is going to be in the major leagues this year. But we'll get to that. But just to sort of as a spoiler alert, I don't have any prospects on this list. So here we go. And definitely feel free to comment your picks as we go. I'm very interested to see what you guys have to think. Or comment after, whatever you want to do. I don't care. But I do want to hear what you have to say. Let's get started. The first one they have is home runs. And that's shocking because obviously Major League Baseball, shocking, it was sarcastic. Major League Baseball is all about the home run right now, and they are trying to promote power because that's what they think fans want to see. And we've talked about this, and I don't want to get into that right now. Home runs. This was really difficult for me because when I was thinking about this list, right, this is a decade. That's a long time. And I think you have to think of it from the perspective of like who resembles these categories, because oftentimes who resembles them ends up leading them, right? For example, there might be a guy who doesn't really have, let's say if it's stolen bases, right? It might not be the fastest guy who has the most stolen bases, but it's probably going to be the guy who resembles stolen bases, right? Maybe that's because he attempts more. Maybe it's because he's on a team that runs more. Whatever the case may be, next year, the guy who leads the league in stolen bases probably isn't going to be the fastest guy in the league. It's not. I don't even know who that is. But I'm guessing it's going to be a guy who's aggressive, a guy who is on a team that likes to run, and maybe is a guy who's just good at stealing bases, and there's obviously technique that comes along with that. Home runs, to me, the symbol of the home run is very obvious. To me, that's Aaron Judge. And I really thought of every way possible to pick him for this category, but I didn't. And let me tell you why. Aaron Judge obviously has been banged up last couple of years. That hurts his chances. If he misses significant time, obviously that's going to hurt his overall stats. Another thing about Judge that I've noticed over the last couple of years is his strikeout rate in his rookie year, in his second and MVP voting season, was astronomical. Led the league with 208 strikeouts, which is just ridiculous. And over the last 2 years, he has actually done a lot of work on limiting his strikeouts, and it's still really, really high, his strikeout rate. But he actually has improved. But with that, he's actually lost some power. And it's weird because he projects as a guy who can really, really alter his swing and not lose power, really. I mean, it's the opposite of this high-energy swing kind of thing that I've been talking about. He has the easiest power of anybody to ever play this risk of losing his power. But he has, I think, because his mentality isn't really in the right place. I mean, I think he's kind of, I don't really know what he's thinking, but only one, or actually I think it was two by the end of the season, 2 of his 27 home runs last year, it might have even been 1, were to left field or left center field. I mean that's just, it's odd, right? And he's clearly making an effort to stay on the ball a little bit longer, try to get some more contact, right? But I'm not sure that's the right mentality for him. I think that's the right mentality for a lot of guys. I think he's obviously headed in the right direction in terms of limiting his strikeout rate. But his strikeout rate improved, but it really, I mean, it's still, it didn't improve enough to make up for what he lost in the power department. And honestly, 27 home runs last year, and he basically played like half a season. So honestly, I mean, we're not really giving him enough credit for what he's been doing, in terms of his power. We've obviously the narrative has been like his power is down, which it is, but still incredible power numbers. Injuries obviously hurt his chances, and just the inconsistency in general hurts his chances. So I actually have Cody Bellinger as my guy for home runs. I think that his hand-eye coordination is incredible. I think he has enough power, not the most power, but I think he has a legitimate opportunity to lead this decade in home runs. I think he's, projects to be pretty healthy, right? Not too injury prone. Lofty swing. So obviously he's got home runs on his mind, and he has the power to do it. I have Bellinger as my home run leader, not Judge. Tough. I thought about Eloy Jimenez. I thought about Acuna. I'm going with Bellinger. Hits. I mean, it feels to me like a sleeper pick, but he led the league in hits back in 2018. Whit Merrifield, to me, resembles hits, right? And I think that he's going to get a lot of total hits because he doesn't walk a lot for somebody, with that high of an average. Led the league in hits, like I said, with 192 back in 2018. Is on a team that obviously they have a new manager. I think he's, young, and I think with the right pieces, right coaches around him, might even improve. Like I said, he swings a lot. He doesn't like to take pitches. I think he's going to get a lot of total hits. His hit totals are better than his batting average totals, which are also very, very good. This one was tough. I gave Luis Ariz actually some consideration, the rookie last year who hit 327. I mean, Luis Ariz to me is I don't know what to make of him. He's one of the best contact hitters in the game right now, and nobody's really talking about him. I'm going to go with Whit Merrifield, honestly, here for hits. Feels like a sleeper, like I said, because I don't think a lot of people would consider him, but he led the league in 2018. So Whit Merrifield. Wins, easy. Walker Buehler. And I think that Walker Buehler is, like I said, I did my top 15, I'm pretty sure it was, players to start a franchise with. I didn't do it on this show. I did it on a different show. But it was 14 position players, one pitcher, the only pitcher on my list. But he's on a Dodgers team that's going to be good now and always really throws out a competitive team. Never really like a rebuilding team. So he's not really at risk if he stays on the Dodgers to be on a terrible team. And obviously they're very, very good right now. So I think he's going to win a lot of games. I think he's going to do very, very well. Walker Buehler is the next superstar pitcher in this game. And he's going to lead the decade in wins, I think. Strikeouts from a pitcher. I gave Buehler some consideration, but I'm going to go with Michael Kopech. So Kopech came up as an incredible prospect. I think he hit 112 miles per hour in a max velo session back when he was with the Red Sox. Incredible velocity throughout his entire baseball career. Tommy John, a year and a half ago, set him back, obviously. But now he's healthy, hopefully, right? He's going to probably pitch the majority of this season in the big leagues. Velocity stuff is there. I don't think he's going to be the best pitcher over the next 10 years, but I think he's going to be very, very good. And I think he's going to total a lot of strikeouts. This guy is tough to barrel up. I mean, triple digits velocity, wipeout breaking ball. He's got a swing and miss kind of a changeup, not necessarily an incredible changeup, and he hangs it a lot, but it's a swing and miss changeup, in a lot of cases. Fastball, three legitimate swing and miss pitches. Michael Kopech, I think, is a dark horse, and I didn't want to throw too much chalk on this list, right? Chalk obviously being like the easy picks. Like I don't want to do that, A, because it's boring, and B, because it's probably not going to shake out that way, right? I think to win a competition like this, you got to go out on a limb and make some difficult picks. Some not risky, but some sleepers. I think Michael Kopech has a legitimate shot to strike out the most batters in the 2020s. Michael Kopech strikeouts. Now, I just said that I don't want to put too much chalk on this list. So I didn't want to put the Yankees as the leader in team wins. But I thought about this, and it's really, really difficult for me not to. And the biggest thing to me, I actually was really, really close to picking the Braves. Their young roster right now is really incredible. But the Braves have really shown a willingness, from an organizational standpoint, to rebuild, and the Yankees have not. So I think it's possible if things don't shake out exactly like they look like they will next couple of years with the Braves, that they actually go into a rebuild, which is obviously going to hurt their win total. And the Yankees always throw out a competitive roster. They're always active in free agency. So the Yankees, to me, it's hard to see them really losing a lot of games in a particular season. I think they're going to total the most wins. They're the best team right now. They're young. I think the Braves have a shot if they remain competitive for those 10 years. But I'm not sure that's going to be the case. So I'm going to go with the Yankees. Team wins over the Braves and over everyone else. And World Series victories is also the Yankees. This one's easy to me. They have the roster to win now. I think they're the favorites. They're young. They're probably next 5 years. They have a shot to win 3 or more. I think they're going to be a dynasty. And again, like I said, they are always competitive, right? So a lot of teams that look like they're going to be dynasties, like let's say the Cubs, right? Or the Mets back in 2015. The Indians, they almost won a title, right? These are teams that, they win a title And then they kind of get complacent with themselves and they don't want to spend so much money and they find ways to convince their fan base that it's a good idea to rebuild. The Yankees don't do that. They're going to be competitive for this decade. Last decade did not win a World Series, so I think they want to prove to themselves and everybody else that they're still obviously the premier franchise in American sports. I think they could win, literally, I think they could win more than half the titles in this decade if all things in New York kind of shake out the way they're supposed to. I think is going to have, the right answers and the right responses to that. So I think they're going to win the most World Series championships in the 2020s, the Yankees, and total wins. My MVP, and this was most MVPs, right? This was the most difficult for me. I wanted to pick Bellinger. It's really tough. I'm going to go with Alex Bregman. Now, I think Bregman, from a talent perspective, is my pick. I'm pretty confident in that. I honestly think that this Astros scandal, it could hurt him. It could hurt him with votes. It really could. I think that now, obviously, if it was like a fan voting thing, he would have no shot. But I could even see some baseball writers actually holding this against him. I really could. It's very possible that they don't, and I think he's actually going to win the most MVPs. I think he's a five-tool player. He's improving every year. He has power, which is what they're looking for nowadays, but also defense and contact. And also, to be honest, last year hit 315 on the road, which was much better than he did at home. So it's not like this. I mean, it seems like this cheating scandal didn't really, who knows, right? But didn't really help him that much compared to maybe some of the other guys on that team. Maybe, we don't know. I'm going to go with Alex Bregman as my most MVPs next 10 years. Cy Young, Walker Buehler, that's easy. He's the next. The interesting thing about this is Casey Mize has a legitimate shot. But Casey Mize, I think honestly, it's tough to pick him over Walker Buehler. But I think he's going to be the second best, maybe even the best, I'm not sure, pitcher next 10 years. But he's just so solid, and he's such a dynamic. His pitchability and his command, that's what really sets him apart. So I'm not sure the strikeout total is going to be there, where it needs to be to win enough Cy Youngs. I think he'll definitely win some. I think Buehler's going to win a couple more because I think he's going to strike out more batters. I think he's going to win more games, especially early on. This Tigers roster is really not good that Casey Mize is going to be on. So I think wins, I think strikeouts, championships. Obviously, championships aren't supposed to help in Cy Young voting, but I think it plays a role, obviously, subconsciously for those voters. So, and then the final one is most All-Star games. And this one was weird to me because I feel like there are a lot of players that could win, or rather could be an All-Star all 10 years. That's not really something that is, out of the question. I think there are a lot of players that, let me take that back. There are not a lot of players that go to 10 straight All-Star games, but I think there could definitely be more than one. And to me, I wanted to pick a guy that is the face of a franchise, has great character, because that's really, honestly, everybody next 10 years is going to have a down year, right? Obviously at some point. But from an All-Star game voting perspective, it's fan voting, right? So it's, if you're protected by being very well liked, by being the face of a franchise, particularly a very popular franchise, it's really difficult for a guy like Aaron Judge, like Mike Trout, like Mookie Betts to not make the All-Star game. I'm gonna go with Bellinger again, face of a Los Angeles Dodgers franchise. Obviously, it's possible for Bellinger as well, but and any player in baseball in major leagues, but. I think Bellinger, and I think they could both do it. I think Trout, honestly, he's going to be like 39 when this decade is over. So, who knows? But I think he has a shot just because, he's going to be an all-time legend. in baseball, but I'm gonna go with Bellinger. So there you have it. Those are my picks for this MLB. I don't remember what they called it, but it's like this MLB 2020 stat category predictions. $1 million on the line. So pretty fascinating stuff. We have a couple minutes left. I want to talk about this new Yelich extension. And I haven't really figured out what I think about it from like a value perspective. I don't know if he's worth it. I think he is. But the big thing I like about this extension is, let's think about this for a second, right? So every team has like their best player, right? And he's the best player on this Brewers team. He's the face of the franchise. He is a superstar. And one of the things that is holding back the Red Sox, the Indians, is the Rockies, is uncertainty around their best player, right? Arenado's in trade talks. Betts was traded. Lindor is, in contract negotiations, and they were talking about trading him. All of those teams are underperforming right now. And I think a huge reason for that is uncertainty around their best player. Think about how difficult it is for a professional franchise to not know if they're going to have their best player on their team going forward, right after the season, right? So I think it hurts the culture. I think it hurts that particular player. I think it hurts the players around him. I think they lock up Yelich now. They have certainty. I think they lock up Yelich, and now they're ready to roll with. They know what their team is going to look like. They lock him up, so there's no uncertainty. It's this team is going to be built around Christian Yelich, and there isn't going to be that opportunity for disrespect where they're throwing around in trade talks. Nolan Arenado now has felt disrespected by the organization. There's no opportunity for that. He's comfortable there. Obviously, he seems to like it there if he signed a 9-year deal or whatever it was. So I think that's a big understated, plus to this deal for the Brewers and for Christian Yelich. That there's that certainty now, and we're ready to go, right? We don't have to worry about, do we have to trade you? Do we have to rebuild, right? As soon as you start talking about trading your best player, you're kind of, embarking on rebuild talk. So they figured out how they want to approach this situation, this contract situation. They get certainty now around their best player. Christian Yelich is a superstar, and I think they're going to avoid these problems that the Red Sox, Rockies, Indians are having, where they're in that middle ground. They don't really know what to do next. And I think that uncertainty has hurt those cultures and has hurt them in the win column as well. So I'm going to get back to this deal and what I think about it from a production standpoint and the value standpoint in that regard. But I think simply on certainty, I think this is a good move for Milwaukee. So thanks so much for watching. Tuesday's show, we'll be back at it tomorrow on Wednesday. So we're not going to do the new schedule yet. We're going to be back at it tomorrow. Thanks again for watching. Subscribe, like, comment, notifications button, and recommend if you think you should. Thanks again for watching. Have a good night. See you tomorrow on Small Ball. Peace.